Okay, today I am doing a book review on Restoring Hope, an integrative approach to marital therapy. This is over 350 pages long and it's a monster. So I took one for the team. It's not available as a Kindle, so I paid the 35 bucks for it and I'm going to give you a review of what's inside. So this book is by Robert S. Paul, Robert K. Burbee, and Christine A. Arnzen. Sorry, Christine, if I've messed up your last name. And they are all longtime leadership staff at Hope Restored. And before that, at National Institute for Marriage. I believe all three of them were, maybe just Robert Paul. Anyway, I'm going to jump right in here. And yeah, this is one interesting book. And I'm so pleased that Robert Paul mentioned it when he spoke at the workshop that I attended at the American Association of Christian Counselors. It was their world conference. And I was really looking forward to hearing him speak because I wanted to ask questions. And of course, he didn't take any questions. He was the only presenter the entire week of conference workshops and intensives that I attended who did not take any questions at the end. So I had to learn everything I needed to learn by reading the book. So let's jump into this. I'm going to give you 10 of my top takeaways. I have other takeaways, but frankly, I just don't want this video to be very long. And you can always go to the show notes and click on the link because I've done a whole blog post with all the links to everything and you can look at it yourself. Okay, so number one is fake data, real consequences. The authors of Restoring Hope present their Focus Marital Therapy model as being research-based. But their evidence is completely built on sand, and they're just hoping you ignore that. They know it's built on sand, but they're hoping that you don't catch on. They repeatedly cite a 2011 article titled Integrative Marital Intensive Therapy, a strategy for marriages in severe distress. Severe distress. Not just newlyweds or people who've just grown apart. These are people in severe distress. A paper that they themselves wrote while directing the National Institute of Marriage, which was later renamed Hope Restored. That study was not peer-reviewed and not independently verified and relied solely on self-reporting surveys from a small, self-selected group of attendees. Out of nearly 2,100 attendees, it was done over like a 3-year period. So out of the nearly 2,100 attendees, only 2 in 10 responded. There was no control group, no external oversight, and no safety data. Yet from that limited sample, the authors claim 85% remained married 2 years later. These recycled numbers have circulated for more than a decade as proof of success. In short, the brand new book, Restoring Hope, uses its own marketing survey as science. I think that we as Christians should be better than that. Faith-based therapy for our dear brothers and sisters in Christ to help them through a crisis and to fix their destructive marriages deserves better than just repeating self-authenticating miracle claims. Number 2, when faith in a miracle becomes a condition for care. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. The Restoring Hope therapy model makes participation in Hope Restored conditional only on belief. Other professionals say, hey, there are certain things we won't take. We won't take couples where there's abuse. That needs to be referred to individual therapy. We won't take couples where there's infidelity. That needs to be referred to individual therapy. We won't take couples where there's substance abuse. That needs to be referred to individual therapy. But that doesn't stop Hope Restored. I think that's a problem. When your belief in a miracle is the only thing that allows you into this program, belief in a miracle and $6,000. If the client no longer expresses faith in the possibility of the miracle, because a lot of people do get clarity when they go to Hope Restored. They realize, ooh, my spouse is checking out. Maybe they're not even coming to sessions. They're berating me back in the hotel room. Yeah, this isn't working. The miracle that I really expected isn't showing up. And if one of the individuals in the couple chooses divorce for reasons of safety, the program is ended for them. The therapists are instructed to terminate counseling, framing the client's decision as a lack of faith or a lack of sincerity. Here's what they say. I'm going to just read it to you, but you can go to the show notes and click on the link. I have this whole thing as a blog post. Here's what they say. However, spouses who are already determined to exit their marriage and reject the possibility of a miracle from God are respectfully and sensitively referred to other resources for marriage dissolution therapy. If the client is unwilling to work toward that objective, meaning to reconcile, therapy is respectfully terminated. Then they question the client's faith and sincerity. Imagine deciding to divorce and then being accused by the staff of attending Hope Restored therapy under false pretenses with a hidden agenda. That's right on page 191, and that's not fair. It's pretty rich coming from a couple of guys who've just misrepresented their study and their success figures. Maybe they are the ones with the false pretenses and the hidden agenda. They've been misleading you about their miracle claims, but they accuse you of misleading them when you realize their program doesn't fix dangerous marriages. This policy moralizes suffering. It treats clarity as rebellion and survival and the desire to get to safety as a sin. Therapy becomes a test of your spiritual faith, not a path to healing and safety. You can only be helped by Hope Restored if you still believe God will fix your marriage. Number 3, when Christian faith demands staying instead of safety. Let me read you one line from page 275. A comprehensive treatment of abusive dynamics in marital therapy is beyond the scope of this text. This single line kind of exposes everything. They talk about abuse, but they admit they don't treat abuse. Screening depends completely on self-disclosure. You have to tell them that you feel safe enough to come to their marriage intensive. So again, a professional assessment is not done. They don't come as professionals and say, these people are safe enough to come. They ask you to tell them if you're safe enough to come. And that seems to be a denial of the very thing they're supposed to be doing. So screening depends on self-disclosure. Victims who don't yet recognize what coercion is can still be accepted. I can't tell you how many Christians were abused for years and said, I never knew I was abused. I knew I was being pressured. I knew my spouse would blow up when I didn't do what they wanted, but I didn't call that abuse. So how do they know if they're being abused? And if the professionals, and Hope Restored claims to have these amazing professionals, aren't there to do professional assessment testing, what are they there for? Is it just a glorified Bible study? So when violence surfaces mid-program, and it does, people yell. Abuse victims protest and say, you're lying about that. Professional standards call for ending therapy, not continuing it. This model is not trauma-informed care. It is theological liability management. Number 4, faith without safety isn't healing. Let me give you an exact quote from page 190. Focus Marital Therapy therapists do not advise or encourage people to divorce. They encourage people to take the issue before the Lord Himself. The no divorce for abuse rule and the never suggest divorce rule turn permanence into holiness and safety, or the attempt to get to safety, into disobedience. Victims are told to pray and forgive instead of protecting themselves legally through divorce. And we know as Christians, although we believe in the sanctity of marriage, we do know that there are some couples who really need to divorce as God's gracious rescue plan for the parents and the children. Scripture calls believers to flee evil and not to fellowship, not even to eat with evildoers. 2 Timothy 3, 1-5 and 1 Corinthians 5:11. Protecting yourself from cruelty, from marriage endangering sin, is not rebellion, it is obedience to God's justice. Number 5, ignoring their own research. I love this. So, one of the things that's a little tricky about this book is they quote so much good research and they spell out the professional standards of care for people, and then they turn around and ignore it. I call it doublespeak. You can call it whatever you want. So, let me give you an exact line from page 331 near the end of the book. A successful outcome for such couples, they're talking about situations where the abuse isn't ending, the infidelity isn't ending, the family crushing addictions aren't ending. A successful outcome for such couples may include them deciding to terminate the relationship, and couples therapy may be contraindicated. So they're saying divorce is a good thing according to evidence-based research, and that you shouldn't do couples counseling. But we're not going to support you. They quote research acknowledging that therapy can be dangerous in violent marriages, and then they just ignore it. As long as you want a miracle and you've got $6,000, they're happy to take it and do their thing. So they double down on forgiveness and communication drills, the very tactics that can escalate danger. Number 6, when never suggesting divorce becomes dangerous. So every participant, as I've already said, has to answer yes to this miracle question, and it goes like this. If God were to perform a miracle in your marriage, would you be willing to accept it? Of course. No person in their right mind leaves a really good, loving, kind, respectful, and safe marriage. But if you say no, even due to fear of your spouse, you are out. And yet a major Harvard study showed that when divorce became legally easier to get, in the 1970s and early 1980s, domestic violence, homicides, and suicides among wives sharply dropped. Freedom to leave saves lives. Divorce is God's gracious rescue plan for these very destructive marriages. Number 7, spiritual framing that shames victims. So I've already read this quote to you. Spouses who are already determined to exit their marriage and reject the possibility of a miracle from God are respectfully and sensitively referred to other resources. This language disguises coercion in compassion. Those seeking safety are portrayed as faithless, as bad Christians, while those inflicting harm are urged to keep working on communication. This isn't pastoral care. This is spiritual pressure. Some might even say spiritual abuse. Number 8, the therapeutic alliance that protects abusers. All right, this is going to take a little unpacking, but stay with me here. They discuss the harmony that takes place between the couple and their therapist, and they want to protect that harmony at almost all costs. So here's what they say on page 271. Spouses may be exceedingly sensitive and reactive to the suggestion that their behavior is abusive. Here, the authors are admitting that confronting a person who is exhibiting abusive behavior might stress the therapeutic alliance. Translation: protecting harmony matters more than protecting the victim. By redefining violence as a mutual interaction problem, they erase accountability and re-traumatize the survivor. So there, the victim who's been hoping to get someone on their side, who's been hoping that someone will see the abuse, who's been hoping that someone will call balls and strikes, ends up being re-traumatized again with the therapist right there. No wonder 7 in 10, more than 7 in 10, for Hope Restored, are separated and divorced later, according to my non-scientific study. Why don't we hear that from Hope Restored? Let's hope that someday they do a scientifically validated study that can withstand peer review. Number 9, Hope Restored, based on the Focus Marital Therapy model, is not trauma-informed and not evidence-based. Sure, they refer to research in the book. But despite using the word trauma, Restoring Hope never mentions PTSD, coercive control, or trauma-informed principles. It substitutes prayer and polite communication for safety planning and accountability. This isn't professional therapy that meets ethical standards. It is theology with a counseling price tag. Now, number 10, and I've got more beyond this. I get pretty hot and bothered over this kind of stuff. It just seems so unfair. They should be so much more upfront. Number 10, hope deferred when restoration replaces rescue. Hope Restored markets itself as a lifeline for marriages on the brink. Yet its model consistently places the institution of marriage above the safety of people, no matter how often they say that's not true. Over and over in the first half of the book, they say that they do count the safety of people over the institution of marriage. But when you actually dig into it, you realize they don't. It teaches people how to care for themselves and their safety. But if divorce is off the table, then the highest form of legal safety is not available and, in fact, is punished. In informal surveys, about half the survivors describe brief optimism at the end of the intensive, like on their way out to the car, followed by despair when old patterns of control and abuse return. By defining success only as reconciliation, Restoring Hope trades rescue for reputation. It preaches salvation, but it delivers silence. Short-term hope from communication work often collapses when unaddressed patterns of coercion, deceit, rage, addiction resurface. In a few cases, about 15%, couples reported meaningful improvement. In many others, separation or divorce followed. I promised I'd end there, but I think there's one more thing you really have to know about this book and about Focus Marital Therapy model, and that is that they avoid the possibility of personality disorders, and that is really dangerous. Hope Restored never mentions narcissism, sociopathy, or antisocial behavior, conditions that often drive chronic manipulation and abuse. And without screening for these patterns, counselors can mistake cruelty for just poor communication and advise victims to speak more gently to those who harm them. Ignoring pathology doesn't make therapy more Christian. It makes it less safe. It's no wonder I hear so many stories of wives weeping in despair during the intensive and simply being ignored.